Hi, this is Megaera Regan. I'm an elementary physical education teacher in Port Washington, Long Island, New York. I've been teaching in Port Washington for, well, gosh, since 1990. And before then, I taught at the Lexington School for the Deaf for 2 years. And before that, I worked with autistic children. And I'm here to talk to you today about the zones of regulation and how we use them at Manor Haven Elementary School and give you some tips and inside suggestions on how you can use them during physical education, wherever it is that you might be. So the zones of regulation is a curriculum that was designed by an occupational therapist who has most of her experience in working with children on the autism spectrum disorder. And what I really like about the zones of regulation is it gives a very clear definition of what self-regulation means and breaks it down in ways that makes it very, very easy for children to understand. So when we talk about self-regulation, we're really talking about how you deal with the emotions that you're feeling, being able to recognize what those emotions are, being able to identify them, and then being able to develop strategies that will help you in life. Another really great thing about the zones of regulation is that it aligns so nicely with social emotional learning and Shape America standards. Its basic focus has to do with self-management skills and self-awareness skills, and they can be taught in ways where children are physically active while learning about them. And it's just a terrific way of helping students with social emotional learning while being physically active and meeting Shape America standards. So, in a nutshell, the zones of regulation is basically you take all the different emotions that you could possibly be feeling and you categorize them into 4 different color coded grids. And with that, it's easier for children to be able to identify what it is that they're feeling, what zone it aligns with, and then come up with strategies afterwards. When we talk about the different zones, the colors that we use are blue, green, yellow, and red. And it's pretty clear just looking at this simple little emoji chart, which is, by the way, this is the one that we use. Our kids love it. So we have them up and around in the building. We've got our blue zone, sad, sick, feeling kind of bored. Green zone. Green zone is really where we want our students to be as much as possible because that's where they can do their best learning in school. We've got our red zone and our yellow zone, which are definitely kind of like difficult areas for the kids to navigate, but super important for them to be able to understand where they are at any given time. Now, I'd like to pause here for just a minute, and I would like each of you to just take a moment and think about what zone you might be in right now, what kinds of feelings or emotions you might be experiencing. I do this with the students often, where we'll just stop in the middle of an activity and just say something like, where are you right now? How are you feeling after we just did that activity? Or I might say to myself, my drive to work was really tough today. I was cut off 4 times. I tried really, really hard not to slip into the red zone, but it was a challenge. So being aware of what zones you might be in, of what emotions you're feeling is a super important skill for everybody, not just for our students. And equally as important is to remember that there are no bad emotions. There's nothing judging about the emotions when we talk about the zones of regulation. Kids need to know that. A lot of times if a student feels really, really super angry, they feel that they are bad. And it's important for us as educators to let them know that that's just not the case. We all have emotions. Sometimes those emotions are strong. But what we need to do is accept that we have them and then figure out what we can do with them if the emotions get too big for us. Okay, so being able to identify emotions. This is really kind of like the first level. If you think of scaffolding learning in this situation, kids need to know how to identify emotions. And one of the things that we like to play with them is a little game called Guess My Face. And guess my face. I'll just have the children gathered around. We'll talk about our different zones, and then I'll make a face. They have to guess what emotion I am showing. For example, I might go like this. And then the kids all say, "You're angry." Or I might go like this. They'll be like, "You're so sad." So we play that a lot. We'll have them turn to each other and they'll play it that way as well. And that's a really kind of a fun game. Um, I'd like you to think about how you can incorporate physical activity into this game as well. We have some interesting ideas, but I think it's kind of fun if you can come up with ideas on your own. How can you take a guess my face game and make it physically active as well? Another game that the kids can play at home, which has been, super helpful because of our quarantine situation and the coronavirus, is a game called Mirror Mirror. And here's a game where they can just practice making different faces into a mirror. So imagine now you are looking into a mirror and you say, "What do I look like when I'm angry? What do I look like when I'm happy?" And look at those faces, and it'll help the kids, and they enjoy playing that game because, after all, most people enjoy looking at mirrors and enjoy making faces. So it's a good way to help them learn how to start identifying the different emotions and recognizing what they might look like. So your challenge for this, like I said before, is to think about ways to make these games more physically active. Okay, so kids can now identify the different emotions. Now it's time for them to be able to figure out what zone the different emotions fall into. And the reason why this is important, I think, is because you want to create a common language with the students. You want to be able to say, Susie, can you do a quick self-check? Because I'm feeling like you might be sort of in the yellow zone right now. And by having that common language, the kids will get it. They'll help each other out. They'll be able to say things like, "Oh, Billy, come on over here. Let me see if I can help you out. You look like you're in getting into the red zone a little bit." So it is important. They need to be able to identify the zones and match their emotions up into each zone that they can. So, guess my zone. Here again is a game that you can play at home if you're on quarantine, or you can play in school. It really doesn't matter. It's a quick, simple, easy game. Find somebody to play with. You're going to take turns making different faces, and they have to guess your zone. Extra challenge. Pop on a mask. It's going to be much harder to be able to identify zones and emotions when people have masks on. So you might want to start talking a little bit about body language. So all closed up like that. I'm thinking angry. Looking at the whole body and the face will help the children. It's a fun way to challenge themselves and practice identifying the different zones. All right, now they can identify the emotion, they can identify the zone, but now they want to put it all together and guess both the emotion and the zone. So this game, you have your students standing 6 feet apart if you're in person and back to back. And they start out very simply jumping while chanting, "Take a guess, turn," and they both turn. Now you can do it in a couple of different ways. You can have one student who is going to be making the face and the other student who is taking the guess. Or they could both turn while making a face and both try to guess what each other is doing. Either way, the object is for them to practice identifying the emotions and the zones. So if you were to ask the two children to do this, they're back to back, 6 feet apart, take a guess, turn. As soon as they turn and look at their partner's face, they're going to call out the emotion and they're going to call out what zone it's in. This is definitely going to challenge them more. So you can scale it back if you wanted to with the younger ones and have them just do either the emotion or the zone, or with the older ones, they can then do both. Your choice. You'll know your students, you'll be able to figure out what they're able to do. And then to add another little element of physical activity, you can always have them, do jumping jacks if they get it correct, or shoulder touches if they get it incorrect. Either way, exercise is just being used to get them moving more, not in any punitive way, because who doesn't love doing shoulder touches anyhow? All right, so here we go. Now we're getting down to the meat of it. You have a class full of students. They can identify emotions in themselves and others. They're starting to recognize them. They are doing a really good job with the color coding. So we've got the common language, when they know it's like, I'm feeling in the blue zone today. So we're doing okay. But now we need to start thinking of strategies. And our strategies are all geared towards helping the students try to get into the green zone. It's not always going to happen. But what we try to emphasize with the kids is that when you're in the green zone, that is when you are pretty much so at your best and you're most able to focus in school and most able to learn. And we always start with the chart that we have here. With our younger ones, we will block out a lot of the different things to make it a little bit easier. And we'll speak of one strategy for each zone to help them. So for example, if we are discussing the blue zone, we might say blue zone strategy is to have a drink of water. Okay, so if you're not feeling very well, you go and you have a little sip of water. You all know how beautifully that sip of water works with your students. If somebody's feeling a little bit sick, oh, go on, take a little sip at the water fountain. You'll be okay. So now we're explaining this is a strategy. This is a tool. If you are feeling unwell, a sip of water will work. Again, like I said, covering up the other ones or even having another chart so that it's not overwhelming. You don't want your littles to get overwhelmed with too many choices. Yellow zone, we usually say 5 deep breaths because that's plain, simple. They understand if I'm getting overly excited, the deep breaths can help. And then the red zone, we will probably say 10 deep breaths. And this definitely gives them the idea that there's a strategy that they can use that can help them. And it's important that they know that there are things that they can do to help them get into the green zone. Gives them a good sense of control over what's going on inside of their bodies. With that, we will start to help the children create their own toolbox. And a toolbox, again, common language, zones of regulation always refers to toolboxes, is whatever it is that the students need to help them to self-regulate. And it could be something as simple as a squeeze ball, a stress ball. A lot of our students really enjoy those. It could be something very portable like taking breaths or even asking for a break. But it's important that the children really think about creating their very own toolboxes. And that's something that is easier to do when we're teaching virtually because there is more time in the day for them to do it. When we only see our students twice a week for PE, and obviously we want to keep them very active. So this type of a task is a little bit more challenging to do in a proper physical education, live, in-person situation, but it can be done. Once our students really, really start to figure out the strategies and have a chance to practice them and come up with a toolbox that works for them, then they can start practicing the strategies. So a simple variation of a move and freeze game that can be done, again, either virtually or in the gymnasium or outside or wherever you might be with your student, is to have the students perform a movement, locomotor movement, galloping, skipping, jogging, it doesn't matter. And then when the music stops, the teacher or the leader, if you're at home, you would have a sibling or a parent help you out with this game, would then maybe give you a little scenario, such as like, I'm so frustrated right now because my brother just like hogged up all the turns in basketball, and it was supposed to be my turn, and I'm so frustrated. I just don't know what to do. What tool can you use? And then the kids have to start thinking about the tool that they can use. They could talk about it, they can explain it, or they can demonstrate it. So it's a really fun game to play with the kids. You just need to have two people at the least to give the challenge, and then the other person would try to do it. And I'd like to show you what one of my students, Lila, did when she was talking to us on Flipgrid about the zones of regulation and strategies that she uses in her toolbox.
Hi, it's Lila, and if I'm in the yellow zone or the red zone, I like to squeeze this stress ball. It's like filled with slime and stuff. It's very fun. And I also like to go play outside or play soccer or run. And I also like to play saxophone or piano. And that's how I calm myself down. Bye.
So that's Lila. And you can see that she's using the common language. She's talking about the color zone. She's talking about her emotion. She's talking about the strategies that she can use, different strategies, her own personalized toolbox, nobody else's. She got some ideas from us during PE, but then she came up with her own. And that is something that is really exciting when we start using the zones of regulation. A couple of little things like this you can definitely use with your students to help them identify different strategies that they might want to use. This type of material is available in the book, The Zones of Regulation, that I showed you earlier, and we've got some references to it in the back. They've got a ton of resources of activities and paper and pencil activities that the kids can do and physical activities that they can do, that if you ever do have the opportunity to take one of the training courses where you will get much more in-depth knowledge, you would have access to all of these kinds of activities that the kids can use to help them out. Okay. So again, we like to now have the children get to practice their different strategies that they've been developing and working on with the zones of regulation. And when we were still in school, this was one of our favorite games. And this is called Change My Zone Tag, where basically if you got tagged, you would freeze and you would have the face of whatever emotion it is that you chose. So you might freeze like this, or you might freeze like this. And you would have to stay frozen until somebody came to rescue you. And the first thing that the rescuer would do is they would ask you, or they would guess, you look sad. And if that was the correct guess, you would say, yeah, I'm sad. And then the rescuer would say, so if you're sad, you're in the blue zone. So now they're getting the emotion and they're getting the color zone. From there, the rescuer would come up with a strategy that could help them to get into or work towards getting into the green zone. If they can't think of a strategy, then the two of them would walk over to one of our rest stops, which I'll talk about in a little bit, find a strategy, and do it together. And here's a little example of a couple of our first grade friends playing Guess Change My Zone Tag. And the strategy that they chose was the elevator breathing, because concurrently with teaching them about the zones, we also teach them different breathing techniques that they can use to help calm them down. So that is what our little friends over here chose while playing this game. Since tag games might not be happening so much in the future, your challenge now is to see if you can think about how this game can be modified for playing in the home, or played in school that doesn't necessarily involve tag. Or how can you make this tag game, or really any tag game, workable with social distancing? So there's your challenge, another something else to think about. And then clearly we always want the children to be able to create their own games. And so Create a Zones game is a challenge. We do this with almost everything anyway, but it works out nicely with the zones of regulation. It can clearly be done at home or in school, where with a friend or a family member, you are going to create your own game that will help with practicing the zones, identifying emotion, the zone, and developing a coping strategy. And obviously, since we are physical educators, we would also want to add the element of physical activity as well. So you can see here now we've got our little friend trying to guess. She's not really sure what kind of emotion we have going on. I think I can guess, but that's okay. I've had a lot of practice doing this. This is really important. This is the part that a lot of the classroom teachers, when we started to do a little bit of professional development, didn't seem to really understand until we really explained it. The zones of regulation is not a behavior modification system. It is not. It is a system to teach children how to self-regulate. So I am sure that there are many, many, many people out there who are familiar with the color charts, where the children change colors throughout the course of the day based on their behavior. It's that clothespin that goes down from one, and then maybe they can go back up, and then it goes back down. That's not what we're doing here. This is not what we're doing here. We are not trying to manipulate or control the children in any way whatsoever. What I will tell you, though, is that since we have started using the zones of regulation in our physical education classes, behavior problems have plummeted. We are having far fewer managerial behavioral problems from the children. They're developing strategies. They are recognizing their emotions. They're nipping things in the bud. They've got ways to deal with it. And I'm going to say that in the past, we did have quite a few children that would act out and would have to sit out for a while, would have to reflect on their behavior and given timeouts or phone calls home. And since we've started this, if I've made 2 phone calls home in the last 2 years, if I've had more than 3 children have to sit out for a timeout in the last 2 years, it's been a lot. It works beautifully when it's done correctly, but just be aware it's not a behavior modification system at all. It is a curriculum to help children learn how to manage their behaviors, manage their emotions, recognize their emotions, and do it in a way that is really supportive of the student. All right, so in physical education, and I think I mentioned this before when I said about our rest stops, we have 3 different areas in the gym set up as rest stops, and those are places where the children can go and take a little break if they need to, if they're feeling that they're starting to maybe get a little bit out of control or slip into the yellow zone, needing a little bit of a break from whatever is going on. They can go to the rest stop on their own. They can figure out a strategy. They can either choose one that we have posted, or they can choose one of their own that they know will work for them. They spend however much time they want to in that area, and then when they're ready, they come back. In the beginning, we had little sensory buckets at some of the rest stops. I think we had sensory buckets at 2 rest stops. Well, pretty sure you can figure out what happened. All the kids wanted to go to the rest stop so they could play with the sensory bucket toys. So we kind of took those out for the time being, just to sort of slow it down and get them to, figure out different things that they can do without the sensory toys. And then gradually we're reintroducing them. So we do have a notebook where they can journal if they want to. We have a couple of stress balls that they can use. I don't think you can see behind me at that one rest stop. There's just the little edge of a nice vestibular board that they can balance on. So we have been gradually reintroducing those things for the children as they are, ready for it. But these rest stops have worked really, really well. They don't always go to the rest stops on their own. We might have to say, I think you need to take a little trip to the rest stop for a second, and then come on, whenever you're ready, you come on back, but see if you can pick a strategy that will help you get ready to participate again in a safe way for everybody. And the kids are they're fine with that. They go over, you can see them studying the charts, and they're pointing to what zone they're in. You can see them doing whatever strategy it is that they're choosing, and then they come out and they play, and it's fine, and it works really, really well. So like I said, we have the 3 rest stops in the gym, and then our 4th area is for our conflict resolution corner, which is a whole different presentation, but I'm sure a lot of you are aware of that already and probably have them in your own gym as well. So that's how we use the zones during PE, or one of the ways that we use them, providing the rest stops, teaching them the skills. We also have one of our zone areas is right at the entrance to the gym itself. And it's a little tap and go activity. As the kids come in, we'll ask them to tap the zone that they're in at the time. And as they leave the gym, we ask them to tap the zone on their way out. And this gives us as teachers a nice opportunity to kind of see where our students are at the time. So for example, our Emmanuel down at the bottom, well, he's looking a little sleepy. He just tapped the blue zone. So we might pull him aside and say, Emmanuel, did you have a bad night's sleep last night? What's going on? We'll have a conversation. And sometimes just talking about it really helps the kids. And then we'll say, well, what do you think you can do? What will wake you up a little bit? He's like, maybe I better start moving. Yeah, it's a great idea, Emmanuel. So it's really, really nice way for us to see what's going on with the kids and for the kids to be able to, again, we'll check in. How am I feeling right now? What's going on? So one little story, when we first started with the zones, we had a fourth grade group of children leaving the gym. And we had done some partner activities. And we had, for that one particular activity, we assigned the student's partner. And this one little boy, Matthew, who was paired with a very, I will say, a very difficult partner. On the way out of the gym, Matthew, excuse me, he tapped the yellow zone. And I pulled him aside and I said, Matthew, I noticed on your way out, you tapped the yellow zone. Could you tell me what's happening? And he goes, oh, Mrs. Regan, it's like, it was really hard for me today working with Leo. He was being real difficult and he kept throwing the ball over my head on purpose. And it got really, really frustrating. I had such a hard time with it. And I said, you know what, Matthew, I really appreciate your telling me that. Were you able to come up with some strategies to help? And he said, he goes, no, I wasn't this time. And that's why I guess I'm still feeling kind of frustrated. And, maybe next time I can try. And it was a great conversation. And I think that he really appreciated that I had noticed how he was feeling, and it gave him some thought about what he could do the next time. And honestly, I probably wouldn't have noticed that he was feeling this way if I had not had this system in place. So it's great having the check-in, check-outs, and you can use it with plickers and plagnets as well. This is just a lot quicker for us. So it's a super quick self-assessment and works great with our littles as well as our bigs. So this past year, we started to introduce the zones on a school-wide level. And it was going really, really well. And then, of course, along came March 12th, and then everything kind of got stalled. But what we did is like I said, we teach all of the children about the zones in PE. So they already have that knowledge. And then when the classroom teachers drop off their kids or pick them up, we will try to point out different things. It's like, hey, so everybody, let me just ask you a quick question. If you're feeling super frustrated after you try really hard to learn how to tie your shoes, what zone might you be in? And the kids will call it out, and the teacher's like, oh, that's interesting. So we try to give little tidbits to the classroom teachers to kind of tantalize them and make them a little bit more curious about it. And we'll talk up how well it's working in the gym as well. So that kind of conversation, faculty room, in the hallways, talking it up and explaining it a little bit has been helpful. We're just kind of like planting the seeds now. Our principal really liked hearing about the zones of regulation. She gave me permission to go to the training. And then when I came back from it, we sat down and we debriefed on that. And she asked if I would give some professional development at a faculty meeting. And, so I did, just a real brief overview of how the zones work. And we put these charts into the shared folder so teachers could print them out themselves and have them hanging in their classrooms. And quite a few of them did, and would say to us, this is great. I love this. I really enjoy doing this. And so that definitely helped spread it a little bit as well. Actually, a couple of our classroom teachers took the zones home for their own children to use with them there. So again, this was really, really helpful. And we did have one very big professional development. It was a 3-hour long one on the zones. And that's where things left off, and we were really ready to completely launch the zones school-wide. We were getting posters laminated to set up in the cafeteria. We were going to have them posted outside for recess time. The staff development was for the whole entire staff, the paraprofessionals, the teachers, everybody. So everyone was on board, and we were all ready to go and have this take off school-wide. And then again, March 12th came and everything was shut down, and so it's kind of on pause. But come next year, I think we'll be able to really get it going again. We have not yet had a school-wide assembly, but I know a lot of schools do, and that helps. And again, next year, my big goal will be to share this more with the families, to get them on board, and that, maybe do a little parent workshops that can help out as well, because I know that this can be really effective at home and super helpful for parents to understand and use at home too. During distance learning, like I said, it kind of stopped the whole school-wide thing, but we were still able to incorporate the zones of regulation for our students, while they were at home. And we did a screencastify it was a review, because the kids had already been spending the whole year. This is something that just keeps spiraling throughout the entire year. We don't just teach it and go. We're constantly referencing the zones during PE class, and coming up with new little games and having the kids create and teach each other games. So this was, without a doubt, this was a review of the zones of regulation that we did through the screencastify. And then we had the children either respond through Flipgrid or through a Google form, just a quick little exit ticket that would help them, express how they were doing with the zones when they were at home. So it's a very, very doable topic to teach through distance learning. So here's a couple of little responses of some of our younger students when they talk about the zone. And I'd like you just to kind of just watch this.
I am at the green zone. Bye.
So as you can see, our littles, not going too deep with it, but, he's saying, I'm in the green zone, and he's got a smile. So he's right. Good for you. And then here's another one of my little favorites.
Hi everyone, it's me, Gabriella. And my toolkit is using stress balls, breathing methods, and I usually go outside and try to do some yoga or do some exercises, and that usually makes me not stressed out, and it's really fun. So yeah.
So you can see there's a lot of thought that went into that. This little Gabriella's only in second grade, and she's able to use really, I think, advanced knowledge and information, and so it's kind of synthesized within her. So you can see how the kids do respond so nicely to this. All right, so I'd just like to kind of leave off with a couple of final thoughts and comments about the zones of regulation. And, clearly we're going to be looking for our teachable moments, and they're always there, whether we're seeing them, virtually or in the classroom. There are going to be those teachable moments, and there's so many times where I would just pause the music during a game or an activity, and I would just say, okay, everybody, just stop. Just stop. I want you to do a quick self-check. I want you to think about what you're feeling inside right now. If you're starting to feel like maybe you're getting overly excited, let's bring it back and get you to a point where you'll be able to really be the best student you can be. So think of a strategy, and let's do it. Let's just pause and take a minute. They might do some volcano breathing. They might do our elevator breathing. They might just close their eyes and think of their favorite place. They might even walk over to the water fountain and get a drink. Everything is fine. They're picking strategies. So those opportunities where you see, starting to get away from them, pull them back remind them of the zones, remind them of strategies. It's great, and this is why they learn it so well. Through, if you're doing remote teaching, you can do exit slips anytime you want, just a quick little Google form. You can have them do some journaling about the zones, anything that will help reinforce it and help them to understand it better and utilize it better. Co-regulating in the very beginning, like I said, the kids are just learning about their emotions, learning how to recognize them, learning what they are. You're probably going to have to co-regulate quite a bit, especially with the younger ones, and just talk to them eye to eye. I can see that you are having a hard time right now. Let's go to the rest stop. Let's talk about what zone you might be in. How are you feeling? Have a conversation. Just being able to do that with them can stop something from escalating very, very quickly. You can have the students co-regulate each other. Have a buddy. Say, have a conversation. It's like, I see that you and Billy, sometimes when you're playing together, he gets really angry with you, or is there something that you can do to help him? Do you think you can, before he starts to get angry, maybe have a conversation? Just say, Billy, can we just take a walk to the water fountain for a second, or let's take a little break. So teaching them to look out for each other and to help each other out can be super important as well. And my last little comment is that the kids really do need to find out what strategies are going to work best for them. It's not everybody does a great job with, or breathing doesn't work for everybody. Some kids might actually need to just take a walk. Go ahead. You can take a walk. Here's a pass. Take a loop around the building. Come back in when you feel better. Each kid is going to need to come up with their own strategies so that they can be the best student possible. And I'm going to say that's pretty much so the zones of regulation as we do them at Manor Haven. And we've got lots of different resources that you can look at. This last one right down here on the bottom, I didn't get to show you, but it's a really nice Prezi presentation that will talk you all through the different zones. If you were interested, you could look at that. And here's my contact information. And I would like to thank you all very much. I really enjoyed coming here and having this conversation with you, although I would have much preferred it to be live because I find it really hard recording myself. I did a little bit of breathing though while I was doing it because I did have quite a little bit of anxiety, yellow zone behavior mounting in me, and breathing for me works quite well. So again, thank you. Thank you for coming to this presentation, and I look forward to meeting everybody live and in person someday soon. Be well, be safe, be active, and work towards that green zone.
Thank you for watching this session from EPEW 2020. We're saving the next few minutes for you to ask those final questions before we log off. If you have any questions afterwards, please reach out to the presenter or send a message to EPEW through our website.
Don't forget that we have more amazing sessions going on. Head over to our website, epew-cp.weebly.com, and look for the virtual EPEW 2020 tab.
You can also access the presentations on YouTube by typing in the hashtag EPEW 2020.
We'd like to thank the amazing EPEW committee for all their hard work over this past year. This event would not have been possible without their dedication, commitment, and volunteering their time to providing high-quality professional development.
Don't forget about our other events like our socials and share times. Links can be found on our website.
Remember our motto for EPEW, come to learn, leave as family. Thank you for joining our family today.